Please stop the screen.
Wasn't today, though.
That sounds like golf weather, Ed.
It's getting close. It's getting close.
Go Monday. She did your stuff today? She did, but she had to order it. Finding how I have one thing. Out of town. I forgot.
Are you good? You good? You guys ready? Okay, so here we go. We'll call to order City Council work session and regular meeting for Thursday, February 17th. It's 2022 at 6 p.m. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Reba. Here. Cool.
Here.
Livingston. Here. Mayor Tom Phillips.
I am here. We have quorum, so we will move on. Item number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to move any of the consent agenda items to the regular agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Motion carries. Item 4, we have a dedicated work session tonight. This is work session for myself and City Council. It's expected to last about an hour, but we will swing into the regular council meeting whenever the work session ends. And for the work session tonight is the Norwalk Central Project Summary. I thought it'd be good to have Holly go over the upcoming development agreements that you should have received today, I believe. So she can research, adjust, negotiate prior to the March 3rd meeting where we are hoping to get the development agreements approved. Holly, do you want to go over the highlights?
Sure. So I have a little presentation here just to kind of go through the Norwalk Central project as a whole. The scope is large and there's a lot of different moving parts to it and different entities involved. So I do have a few of our partners here, the A team walking in. There's Kirk. So we've got Kirk from Novo, we've got Mike from Sportsplex, and we've got Tim from Diligent. I don't know if our civil engineer Joel will be here or not, but at least they're here to answer any questions if anybody has anything specific. But I thought we'd just start with just the overall overhead view. So this next slide here, actually on this one, I'll just show you really quickly. Shelby is developing a website just for Norwalk Central. So that way when residents, anybody, media, they just have questions about what's going on inside this large area, they'll have one aggregated place to find all of this information. So this will be really, really nice when she has it done. You can just kind of see she's just got a general idea in mind of how that will look. And off in the top left corner, she has a little logo box right there. She's thinking about maybe doing a contest for people to design the logo for Norwalk Central. So that's just future conversation, just very early ideas here. But anyway, so we'll work on that. But then the next slide, I don't know if Luke's controlling this somewhere from beyond. There we go. Okay. So if you guys kind of remember way back when we started this whole thing, we called this area sub area 1. We didn't know a better name to call it. It was just all this land, several hundred acres, right in the middle of Norwalk. With Paris, everybody did a lot of planning for this whole area, what it could be. The city council, the public came in on it. And that's that original plan, an original idea of what all that land could be. So in there, I think it's the gray box is kind of in the center to give you everybody an idea of what we're looking at is where Capital City Fruit, Fredo, those guys are located in those upper gray areas there. So it's a really large area. So we're just shifting the name for now, which it can always change. Nothing's been made official, but we're shifting the name of this whole great big area to Norwalk Central instead of sub area 1, which is doesn't tell you anything. So then on the next slide, we'll zoom in a little bit further. So there's three components within this greater Norwalk Central area. You know, we have the Hughes Century Crossing, and that's within this greater Norwalk Central area. And that's what we'll talk about here in just a second. And then we have the Central Iowa Sports Campus that we're working on with our private developers. And then we have the Center of Recreation Excellence and the City Center. And Robin will talk more about the Center of Recreation Excellence, because I know it's a name that she's been playing around with. And I don't think anything, again, has been officially selected, but just we've got to call these things something right now. So moving into the next slide, we'll zero in on these. So this is the concept right now for kind of zoomed in on about 76 acres of this greater giant Norwalk Central area. And this is Hughes Century Crossing is owned by Diligent Development. And you can see the purple residential to the south east corner there that's already been developed or developing, all of that residential in there. So all of the other areas are what we're working on right now. So those light tan areas, the green fields in the middle, the commercial along the highway. So the commercial components of that are what we're calling, or what is called Hughes Century Crossing. And that first commercial building that was built is the one right along the highway there, kind of north of Casey's. It's called, it's called Hughes Century Crossing Retail Center, but it's got Mahalo's for reference, Subway, all of those. So that was the first commercial piece that's in there. And then all of the surrounding light areas have every type of commercial, we hope. Lots of restaurants, retail, hotels, you name it, office, professional. And then right smack in the center is the sports campus area that we're working on, been working on for a long time. And you can see the fields there in the kind of center area. And then there's the white L-shaped building, which part of that is the city's future rec facility. And then the other part of it is a private fitness and health retail center. And then you see the parking surrounding it. I don't know if Mike or Tim, if you guys want to add anything in as we're talking about Hughes Crossing or the sports specific.
Yeah, I mean, I could give a little bit of background about how.
We got people on the phone,
Sorry.
sorry. Yeah.
I didn't prep you on that. Put your name and address.
Yeah, I can give you a little preview on what is planned to go in the sports area. If you look at the two big green boxes, that is two turf fields, and they're multi-dimensional. You can do soccer, you can do baseball, you can do softball. Generally what will happen is you'll have portable fencing that you can move in any way, shape, or form in any kind of field that you want to play. So the design is not as big as potentially what would normally be built, but constant use and a constant flow into that one area. So you can, the different entities that we're working with are pretty multifaceted in what they do. And so generally, for the most part, the object is to, when this is opened, it's full. And so there's not a lot that we have to work through. From that standpoint, it's a combination, it'll be a combination of training, local league games, and then tournaments. So there'll be some economic impact for people coming in on the weekends and tournaments, people coming from different parts of the metro for leagues, and then kind of a local flavor for training and practices. And then the L-shaped building, obviously you guys know what's going in to the city side. The other side will be a combination of activities, training, kind of more on the sense of weekday traffic for the most part, and then fairly high-end training on that side of it. So that will work in combination with the building off to the northeast a little bit to produce a little bit more of a traffic driver. So it's a combination of sports-related traffic drivers and then people who would benefit to be around it. So that's the simple synopsis of what the sports center is going to be.
Perfect.
Anything else?
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Before he gets away, don't we need his name and an address or something? Right here.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike Mahoney. I'm from Waukee. What specific address? Good enough.
That's enough for me.
Yeah, Mike Mahoney, Sportsplex USA is our business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then drilling down a little further on the next slide here, we'll show the concept. I don't know what's happening. There we go. So the concept that we brought to you all, I don't know, a month or two ago, when we had the 2 different options or 3 different options on how to lay out our future Main Street idea. So this is the concept that everybody selected, which is putting the retail commercial buildings along Chatham instead of further into the development, south into the development. So that's just kind of zoomed in from the last shot that we looked at there. And so this is north of the city facility and the private facility in the parking lot. So it's north of that. You can see that the park is kind of connecting in there, our city park there on the bottom. So that shows that concept, lots of extra parking in the center. They added in a north-south trail connector, and it is in our development agreement that a couple council members asked, and Tim added that in to connect people from the retail and commercial on the north side along Chatham down into the rest of the development, into the trail. So lots of nice walkways and easy access for everything from the sports campus up into the Main Street retail center area. Tim, this is the most recent one, right? Okay, I thought so. Okay, and so then the next slide will jump down more specific to the sports campus area. So Mike gave a good just overall view of how their operation will run there, and they're working closely with Robin in Parks and Rec, and she'll talk here in just a second too. But this concept, we just received this because we've done some shifting over time just to perfect everything, and the 2 facilities are now split apart, which you all know, we talked about that at the last meeting. And so we moved our buildings apart for several different reasons, but one is just it'll make the private building, it'll make things less complicated in the future if anybody needs to sell or grow. And then it also gives kind of a nice little courtyard space in between the 2 facilities that the city can use. We can't build anything on it, but the city can use it as park space or walkway or whatever Robin ends up programming in there, and Mike's people could probably do some stuff with it too. So that also allows us to expand still to the north. Kirk, do you want to hop up and talk anything on our city facility that's maybe the most recent? You got to give your name and you got to give your address.
Yeah, Kirk Mo, de novo. We're in Valley Junction, west Des Moines. So as far as the city's facility, we're working through design currently. We're in design development. So that's really programming, designing some of the systems within the facility. Architecturally, we're coming together. So we're taking some of those mechanical units, placing those on the facility, and then starting down the path of structural design. As you can see, Holly mentioned that the 2 buildings separated there, Mike's building and the city's building, and that really provides some really good circulation around the facility in conjunction with the courtyard. What that has also done is allowed us to have glazing on that side of the facility, so natural light's going to come in. We do have renderings pulled together. I don't know if we can walk through those.
Yeah, they're coming up. Luke, if you'll move forward, I have a road network slide, and then after that are the renderings of the facility that are brand new. Just got these, so nobody be mad that this is where we're putting them out.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about the renderings. The main entry we've accented with wood structure requested by Robin and some of the folks here in the community. So that really is a nice accent to that front main entry. Not saying that the color of the wood will be as depicted, but it could change and move through design, obviously. Down below, you're seeing the actual face of the gymnasium portion on the bottom right. We've got some natural daylight coming in there with the glazing off the corner. A little splash of cow wall, which is kind of a more dense different product. You really can't see through it, but it is allowing natural daylight in. The back space, we've got a kind of a patio space, so attendees can go out, grab food in the concessions, and sit out and eat and relax outside. So yeah, we've got a couple more renderings coming we're working on. Hopefully have those here early next week. Our designer was out, who pulled these beautiful renderings together, so they'll be coming down the pipeline here soon.
Hey, Luke, if you want to move to the next slide, we can show the interior. There you go.
So, yep, top side, you're looking from, sorry. So you're standing on the back side, your back would be towards the porch or outside the building there, and you're looking into the gym space. You can see the window. So we've got windows in there, and we've got seating in front of those windows so spectators can sit. get on their phones, charging ports, all of those things kind of from the glazing there. Obviously the amenities can change and move around. Colors, we have not decided on a color, so these are just there as representation. The court itself, so this is one visual I want to modify for everybody. So the visual will be more bird's eye looking down. You can see the two courts here. We've got obviously two more courts on the other side. So really good. I really like the colors of this thing. It really pops. The gray and the blue is kind of cool. And then the other photo is actually right in front of Parks and Rec. And it's looking out in the lobby space. You've got a ticket booth there or a check-in. Everybody's flowing through that space from the main entry into the space in front of Parks and Rec. So yeah, it's really coming together nicely.
And Robin, if you're on, if this is probably a good time for you to pop in there and talk about your plans in there, what you're working on. I think she's on.
He's on, or was. Yeah.
There she is.
Okay, there it is. I think Kirk went over most of the things that I was going to talk about, just update you guys what we went over in our meeting last week. As far as Parks and Recreation specific programming, we have started to put our schedule together for court use for our specific programs. We have kept that to weeknights, and those weeknights right now are roughly probably at least 80% full. We do have a lot of the, I guess they're not really private teams, but the teams that rent the schools, those, we can add those in because a lot of those will be pushed to us according to the school. Once our facility is built, they will want to transition those teams over to this building. And then we have also been contacted by an outside group interested in renting courts for a few weekends for basketball tournaments and pickleball tournaments. And so, like I said, we're just kind of working on that. I think the more the facility is out there in the media, the more people know about it and the more they're interested in learning what it's about and renting the facility. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Robin. And we have officially been every outlet of media in the metro in the last couple of months. So that's great. Which is partially why we've got Shelby working on the Norwalk Central website, and she will be working with JLL, who is representing Hughes Century Crossing, so that we can make sure that our branding is cohesive and that we're doing this together and that it makes sense when it comes out, because after March 3rd, if all goes well, it will officially be launched at that point. And then really, site work can start whenever it works for the guys in weather. Our purchase agreements, I'll talk about timeline here in just a second, but our purchase agreements then will come right after the development agreements for the land. Okay, so for that, Luke, if you just really quickly want to pop back up to the road network slide. 7, yep. So this just straight out of PUD. Just shows you kind of the general basic roads that surround this. There will be some smaller roads that kind of connect, or just drives that connect within. And as the commercial pieces get developed, then those will get implemented. But these are the main roads that will be developed or built over this next year through Diligent. And that is what we will be talking about with their development agreement at the next council meeting when we get that approved. So if they get approved. But they will be putting all of that in, and we will be rebating them over time with tax increment financing for that network. And that will serve the entire area, that infrastructure. So with that, then I think the last thing on here, I'll just quickly hit on at the bottom. Everybody asked about timelines for everything. So where we're at today's meeting, there are several just procedural pieces that will take us through into the next council meeting for hopeful approvals of the development agreements, both with Diligent and Sportsplex on March 3rd. And then today we do the public hearing for the URA amendment so that we can use TIF. And then you will also have the third reading of the Hughes Crossing PUD. So that's the pieces today. And then the preliminary plats 5 and 6 were Hughes Crossing, which are the kind of the first sections of the roads and the infrastructure. So High Road and Hughes Drive and Chatham Avenue, those sections, the first pieces to go through, those will be on P&Z February 28th, and then on council March 3rd. And then on March 3rd, again, approval of the development agreements, hopefully. March 30th, by March 30th, we plan to have the execution of the land purchase agreements for the city's facility, the regional detention, and then Sportsplex's land from Diligent. And then whatever procedure we need to do for that would be on the March 24th council meeting. So working with Jim on that procedure and Jean with money. April 1st, mass grading site work begins. Does that still sound right, Tim? Weather permitting. Yep. Okay. June, this June, infrastructure work begins with the roads. September, we're hoping maybe the fields will be open. I know that that's kind of the plan, is to get everything as done as possible, but maybe they can have some activity on the fields by fall. And then fall, winter, facility construction hopefully begins. And then by the end of December of 23, we're hoping facilities will be open or at least significantly completed. So that's the time frames right now. Guys, am I missing anything? Any major points? Luke Paris, Wayne, Wilson, Jean, money. Okay. With that, I'll just see if there's any questions on any of this. No,
I don't have any questions.
okay, okay.
Well, I got one question. Have you sold it? Have you been able to lease out any of your space yet? Or have you even tried?
I'm sorry.
Have you been able to lease out any of your space, or have you started?
Yeah, we have a couple of LOIs that have been signed.
For the indoor space? Awesome.
So, and we'll finalize that once the development area is done.
No other questions? Okay. So in terms of the development agreements, and Lindsay sent those out. Thank you, Lindsay, for helping. We had 1,000 exhibits. We wanted to fill those in as much as possible before sending you those, just because generally all of those exhibits come way later in the process, but we want to get ahead of that. So there are still some blanks that will get filled in over the next 2 weeks, but if there are any questions or anything, please let us know on either of those agreements as you review them. We can certainly answer those questions.
Good. I think we're good. Thank you very much for coming in.
Can we talk the development agreements themselves?
You want to talk?
We sure can. We wanted to make sure you guys had them in hand before we
I
really.
understood we were going to talk about them a little bit. That's maybe where I thought we were headed with this. So
Yeah, we can.
Let's go over high level.
Okay. I'm just gonna pull them up real quick.
sorry, and that's where I thought we were headed with this. I thought this was just the pre to that. So.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I have all the exhibits open. $250. This one? Okay. I knew what I was I'm sorry, bear with me. Oh, this one. That's what she sent it. Okay, yep, this is the most recent. That Lindsay and I were working on. Okay, so I have the Sportsplex agreement pulled up. Do you want me to just run through all the basic terms, or are there specific questions you'd like me to address? Because they're lengthy.
I think just a general overview. I have like one question on that one, and then kind of one overall question maybe about the whole thing.
Sure. So the general terms for the Sportsplex development agreement, we have a 10-year rebate structure with them. to pay 8 numbers up here.
You don't have to give specific numbers.
Okay.
I'm good with.
So they would have an 85% rebate for 10 years with the structure that we have in place, because they're looking at doing a $8 million minimum assessment. So that's about double of what we initially thought, because the project's grown. They've got information back from the county assessor that puts their fields that are very high value, which was kind of unexpected for them. So overall, the value of the project has grown. So we've increased that. So $8 million minimum assessment, 10 years at 85% rebate of the 31% or 31 that we're able to use for TIF rebate. And I don't know if you have the spreadsheet, if you want to get into any of the specifics of that annually, what that would look like. We are doing, based on their minimum assessment dollar amount, we're doing 20%. We always have the 20% structure in there for the upfront grant. So that $8 million minimum assessment gives them a $1.6 million grant at time of C of O. So when the facility's open, they would get that grant. And then after that, they'd get the 10-year 85% rebate based on their value, the actual value that comes in. So that's the general terms for their TIP side of it and the grant side of it. We do have a couple of kind of separate agreements that are referenced within this development agreement with Sportsplex, because one of the things that we're doing with them is they will be managing our concession. So we'll have the larger concession inside the city facility that the Sportsplex group will be managing. And then we will be getting a percentage back on, and they're working with Robin Parks and Rec on that as well for the specifics. And then we'll also have a separate agreement that will be figured out later, but it's referenced in this agreement for potential facility management. And I know that's, again, if Robin, you can hop in anytime, but I know that that's going to be something worked out between those two groups on what do we need? What does the city need in terms of help for management? Maybe very little, maybe a lot, but that's something that they'll have to determine kind of over time as programming takes form. But Mike's companies, that's one of the things that they do is they help manage other facilities around the metro for cities and for other.
And I'll stop you there because that's where my question lies. And it's on page 12, Jim, if you don't mind going to that page of this agreement, sorry. I just was, it references both of those agreements and maybe a third agreement in there. I couldn't quite tell. It very washy language in there. But the first one says that we would explore a management agreement, but the second one says we will enter an agreement. And I guess I was just questioning.
Yeah.
So we're saying today, or when we approve this development agreement, that we will enter an agreement for them to run the concessions part of it, correct?
Yes, so
we're saying that that's a definite, no matter what.
Yes.
That's part of the agreement.
Yep. The facility management is separate, but the concessions and sponsorship we are including as an agreement in this agreement.
So I wanted to not read that because I don't know that I necessarily agree with agreeing to an agreement that we haven't seen. That's maybe if you understand what I'm saying, we're agreeing to an agreement that we haven't written and seen. I would just rather say that we're exploring it, or I don't know, I just don't like that terminology of we're agreeing to another agreement, but we haven't seen that agreement yet. Maybe that's my question on that one. The first one was pretty clear about it. We'll explore it. I don't have a problem. I just want to make sure that we aren't.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I just don't want to agree to something that we don't know what it says
So
today.
Could we say, we agree to enter into a contract?
Well, is it covered by saying it'll be in a form mutually agreeable to the parties?
That's why I just wanted to bring up. That was my only. It's not a big deal, but it's just
I
something that
understand.
just wasn't
Language
I
matters.
think it's definitely.
I think that would work.
The second provision is more binding than first. First, is just kind of, okay, we'll explore it, maybe we will, or maybe we won't. I think the second paragraph where it says we shall, I mean, it contemplates that we are going to enter an agreement. I think the terms are, you have to be mutually agreeable, and it says mutually agreeable. I think by saying it shall, doesn't mean that we're adding the final terms. It means that we're all going to proceed, and there's an implied covenant of good faith when you enter into an agreement. That's kind of what we're doing here, is that we're entering into an agreement that we're going to negotiate concessions thing. I mean, if we can't reach that, obviously, ultimately, there isn't going to be an agreement.
And then flip side,
because-
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
The flip side is do we have to do any open bidding? I don't know. This is just off the wall
No,
question.
no, we
We're not
don't.
doing it, but
No.
Perfect, cool, leave it then. Leave it alone.
Yeah, as long as the word mutual agreements in there, we should be.
Yeah.
good to go.
I mean, we have to negotiate, but yeah, it does say, but it is more binding. It can't be, we later say, no, we're not gonna do it.
We're gonna run it ourselves or we're gonna have somebody else run it.
Yeah.
And then maybe a term in there, because is there a term? Of how long that, right, is that forever? 10 years, 1 year,
Whatever's
5 years?
whatever's
Yeah, I think
mutually
if you want me to give you some background on that part of it, of what it is,
Mike, can you, sorry. I'll get used to it. We got people online.
Okay, yeah, if you want to have some background to what we're asking for, the concessions part and the sponsorship part, a lot of this project is pretty dynamic. And so part of the deal is, well, number one, it's pretty essential to the overall business plan for what we're trying to accomplish. But the second part of it is for the individual citizen who comes in here, having a constant, I guess, experience between what's going on is probably pretty important, because when we go out and do sponsorships, we want to make sure we have it organized so the city is not going doing one thing, the private entity is not doing another thing, and so it's organized in that capacity. And the concessions part, one of the things that's important with that is we don't want to have to guide people to go to the concessions in the city, go to the concessions in the other entities. We want to be able to put it together in one where we don't mind where they go and everybody's mutually benefiting from that. So from our standpoint, it is pretty critical to the function of what we do.
No, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then the management part, yeah, we did talk about the actual facility management. We'll just discuss that afterward. We're plenty happy with what the city said with that, so.
And I think also getting back to the term of it, that'll be part of the mutually agreeable terms is actually the term of the agreement, because the city can't open, we can't enter into an open-ended agreement. I'm sure that's what you were getting at. We can't just say perpetually forever, this is gonna be the agreement. There has to be a term.
There were just lots of little things in
I get
there.
it.
No, you're good. I
It's a
actually
unique- no, it's a
agree with it.
unique
It makes
deal. It's
sense.
a unique
So
deal.
So
it
don't
makes
sit down.
sense what you're recommending.
Don't sit down. So help me understand what sponsorship rights means.
So there's two parts to it. Since the city has a facility, we have a facility, there's another group with a facility. There's two types of sponsorship rights. So it's a naming rights if somebody wanted to come in and name the whole complex exclusively. Then sponsorship dollars would be distributed evenly between those three entities. If it's inside of the city complex, then there's an agreement for the city retains the majority of that. The people who go and sell it retain a portion of that. And so that's what the sponsorship is. There's a somewhat critically important for a lot of the pro formas and budgeting for these type of places for sponsorships. You guys probably do it at Mackinac, I'm sure, to where whether it's banner sales or naming the courts or whatever that may be. So that's an exclusive to yours that has a different, say, percentage basis than it was if somebody wants to come and name the whole facility. So those get anything that is part of the entire facility that we're all sharing in with the traffic. And that's why the concessions is that type of way to where everybody benefits the same. There are two types of sponsorships, one for the entire complex and one for the individual.
Okay, so this section, the management of city field house project, the management agreement, that says that we will enter into this agreement a concession and sponsorship rights agreement. So I don't know, you might have just gone too fast. So if there's if somebody wants to have naming rights to the whole thing, you would be in control of that?
We will work with some of our partners and go bring those to the table. If we all agree on that this is a good naming rights thing, then we will distribute the revenue from that evenly between the three parties.
Okay, so you're
We're in charge of, yeah, it's
like
more
the
of a say
head body, but it's a collaborative
it is a
discussion.
collaborative.
Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to understand
In
that.
the bracket, this might answer some of David's questions too, the bracket that's below those couple of paragraphs our bond counsel switched over to, she put this bracket in there to show that split. So that you can see kind of specifically if this area is sold, this is who gets what, and because we had it in language and it was really messy and hard to read. So she put that little bracket. So when we have that separated agreement, it'll be that basically with, you know, the signatures. But yes, Jackie, we wanted a simple way to get the sponsorship dollars. And this
Yeah.
way they can sell it for us and
Yep.
Manage that.
And it organizes when we go out to the community and ask for those sponsorship things. It really is important to have an organized, organized way to do it.
Absolutely. I just frankly want to make sure that we have some input in the naming, I guess, right? I mean,
Yes, yep.
Or authorizing the naming.
Yeah.
As far, have some sort of input.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Don't run away too fast. My last question.
Getting comfortable with this.
So come September, you guys got the fields at September 14th or whatever, you're open, okay? Where are we parking out there?
Well, the design, there are a couple different lots. Part of that will be in his territory as far as are you talking this year?
I'm talking this year. I'm talking right away. If we're gonna have those fields open in September and you're gonna be doing stuff on weekends, where are we putting cars?
There is a parking lot on the south. And I
Is that gonna
know
be done by, this is me asking the timeline, because
that's, yeah, I mean, that's the hope and that's the plan. And then I don't know the timing of the street parking on the side street.
Yeah, Tim, when I was going through that timeline, so with their southern lot and then the street parking, the plan is for that to be the same time as the fields being completed, is that right?
Yeah, portions of it.
Okay.
We won't have, I don't have
I know.
the, we won't
Look
have
at the map.
the whole loop, but we'll have a portion of that. So there will be some street parking.
Okay.
All of it.
Part of that, our side of things is we'll also dealt with them. We'll talk about vertical construction, how we're gonna handle that, schedule that, moving forward too. So we'll work on that behind the scenes.
We're aware of the parking.
it's just a concern of mine.
Yeah, and it's ours. I mean, we want people to have.
And it's the
good
first
experience.
the first year of it that you're out there. It's not I think once we get things rolling out there, we're fine, but it's the first year. And that's probably more on you, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that there's probably not huge events the first year before there's concessions, before there's facilities, restaurant
Indoor
facilities,
facilities, yeah.
before there's, and if it's starting in September. We'll have.
I'm not as
time.
concerned, but I'm just in my mind, it's in my mind because I know what parking is every other soccer baseball complex across the state, so it's not a good situation anywhere. And I don't feel like we have enough spots to begin with, but
Kirk, the facility that'll be built to the south, that'll be the concession and restroom. That one's on the same timing as our buildings, right? Or will that be built first?
Well, that'll be built first.
Okay.
So we're gonna want that concessions up.
Okay. That's good. 'Cause there's parking around that.
Good.
Jean, am I missing any major points in Sportsplex Agreement? Luke Nelson, am I missing anything? I'm at the bottom down with the exhibit, so.
No, that one paragraph about the management agreement, I'm sure Mike would agree, that's the section we spent the most time on. I think you covered everything well.
That's one question for you. So if I understand it right, this will have a 10-year payoff.
We will be done paying rebates to them in 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
But after that, we do have in the diligent agreement, which we'll talk about here next, is if we still owe diligent money on the infrastructure, then those next 10 years increment, then we would use to pay them back for the rest of their infrastructure. But if all the value is coming in early and we have, all sorts of things being built, then we wouldn't need to continue through those next 10 years. Just the plan.
And we are also structuring the debt over the life of the TIF, so for 20 years. So we making payments on the upfront grant.
They'll have to have it to get it.
Yes, correct. That'd be fully based on their value. Okay, and then I don't know if you all had time yet to look through those agreements, but at the very end of them, Lindsay and I scrambled a lot to get all these exhibits because they usually come much later in the process, but we were able to get a lot of them. Thank you guys. I think Kirk costed me a time or two because he's like, can I have more than 24 hours for these requests? But we have pretty much everything in there that we normally wouldn't have until about a year later. So I'm kind of proud of everybody, the whole team for putting all this together. And Joel did a ton of work on legal descriptions. It's just an immense amount of work. So hopefully when you guys look at all that crazy language in there, you appreciate the guys that put a lot of time into it because it was a lot of work. But with that, if you don't have any other questions on this specific agreement, we can jump over to diligence.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Diligence, I think, is a little simpler because it's primarily based on the infrastructure. Okay, so we'll jump down to diligence main terms. So we are providing up to 20 years of TIF rebate to Diligent to pay back the amount that they're spending on the infrastructure. If it takes that, again, we're not anticipating it would take that long based on everything that's planned to be built in there. Their rebates, of course, are based on the value that's built. We have 1.6 upfront.
1.54.
1.54 upfront. So when they receive the upfront grant portion, that will be when they turn over the first connecting roads that give access to the sports campus. So right now they've turned in the preliminary plats for 5 and 6. And so that is those sections of road that will provide access to the sports campus to be developed. So once those are complete, then they're able to receive that first portion of their grant. And then the rest of what they spend on infrastructure will be paid back over time through TIF. The max I think we have on that is 9.5 million. 12 million total with the grant upfront.
With everything. Yes.
With everything. So if we separate out the grant up front and then what's left over is 10. So that's the basics of theirs. We'll have a separate purchase agreement for our land that we're purchasing for our city facility and parking lot. And I think where our land total is around 4.56 acres, somewhere in that arena. It changed a little bit when we separated the buildings. And so we'll purchase our land from them. Sportsplex will purchase their land from them all around the same time. We'll also have a separate purchase agreement for the regional detention, which we came to an agreement on the price on that. Also good news for council. We were able to come to the same agreement with Capital City Fruit to purchase the rest of the regional detention land that we needed. So we've got that whole package. Wayne's working on that. You have anything, Wayne, on the timing of the detention, or we're just still waiting on McClure? Everything's going well with that though. So those will be separate agreements. And then I think the park will be dedicated over parkland. You'll be building the trail as indicated in the agreement. Am I missing any parts?
Can I talk about the trail? I think I told you, yes, I was okay with waiting, or told Luke, I think, I don't know who it was, I was okay with waiting till. But I think once the trail from the highway to across the gas easement goes in, I think we need to have the trail from Chatham down to that gas easement at the same time. If that makes sense to you.
Tim's mind.
Yeah, just the L. I mean, if you're putting it in from the highway to on the gas easement from the highway to that road, I think we've got to have a way to get it.
Do it all.
Not with the lights. I don't want it with the lights. I want it with the. If you're putting across the easement, I don't want to wait till the lights, traffic lights go in. I think that was what I was asked.
I think the concern, well, Luke might want to speak up on this one, because I think the concern with doing it before the traffic light was in was just the nightmare of people coming and going without a traffic signal. I don't know, Tim, is that, or construction ruining the trail?
Construction.
Okay.
If there's not, I guess I was under the impression that there was
kind of a set timeline for the traffic lights.
Mhm.
If that's not the case, then we can set a date. I just would want that date to be after you guys are done with construction and stuff like that. So it'd be a year or two, but
Which trail are you talking about?
The north-south one that we had at that last go around from Chatham to the gas easement.
Along Highway 28. Okay.
And that one, I'm struggling with why you want to wait till construction's done on that part.
I'm talking about the whole trail.
I'm just talking about the one little piece. I don't want to wait till the light goes in to have to wait on that piece, because I think that's how the agreement reads, is that when the traffic light goes in, then that.
They're
piece is
all
required.
Yeah.
It's all required at the traffic light.
Mhm.
And who approves the traffic light? Who do we have to do it? Do we have to get DOT approval to do it, or do we have to decide?
We have the warrants there to put in the traffic light, don't we?
I have to review their traffic study. I don't recall if this development would kick it in.
Okay.
I don't recall off the top of my head.
But I'm just trying to make sure timing of it all. I'm fine with that, how it works. I just want to make sure we aren't 10 years down the road and that's not done.
Agree that it would be once the construction is done, so that we're not, ripping it up and stuff. So if we want to.
That makes sense, yes. No, once that construction is done, I just don't want to wait 5 years down the road and we're still not putting that in because we didn't get the traffic light.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
David, this is Luke. It's entirely possible. And Tim, I'm curious your thoughts on it. We could just put a set date in the development agreement, not traffic signals, not other construction related. We could put a specific date and leave it open for, if there's some compelling reason to not do that down the road, we could come back to the table if you are more comfortable with just having a date.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Portsmouth Diligent, Clive. I'm fine with that. Rather than a specific date, because obviously stuff could go. I think what we had with the traffic signal, what I liked about that was that it was like X time after this. Maybe it's not X time after the traffic signal. Maybe it's X amount of days after the city opens their rec facility. I'm fine with that. I mean, it gets, we're all working the same date, so whatever accomplishes that, I'm supportive of.
I'm just more concerned with, I understand the getting across the highway part, but also there's just the mobility through there. I think a lot of it having that trail in there.
That'd be a workable solution though, because we could control when that opens. And then if it keyed on when we open that, that's totally independent. of traffic.
Yeah, I think we keep the same language as we must have it permitted and start construction as weather apply or allows, like we have it, but instead of traffic light beginning or approved or whatever the language is now, it's just the city's recreation facility opening up.
Okay.
Maybe I'm trying to eliminate the DOT from this mix. And
yeah, that's
maybe that's all it really is.
I don't know why.
Okay, so we'll just change the language up a little bit to be based more on the CLO instead of the light. Okay.
That was my only question. So you're good. You good? Okay, I think we're on.
Nope.
All right. Anything else from over here?
Nope. Good.
I think we're done.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys.
Okay, item 5, welcome to guests and public comment. Thank you for coming to our meeting tonight. We'll go ahead and open up the dais for non-agenda items. We'll give you a 3-minute time limit. We can't take action on these tonight since they aren't on the agenda. And also, if you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time. Anybody like to address council tonight for non-agenda items? Hearing none, we will move on. Consent agenda, let's see, we have approved the February 3rd, 2022 minutes of the regular city council meeting. Have expenditures, we have some tax abatements, have renewal Class C beer permit, Class B wine permit, and Sunday sales for Dollar General. We have renewal Class C liquor license with outdoor service and Sunday sales for Legacy Golf Club. We We have renewal of Class C liquor license, Class B wine permit, Class C beer permit, and Sunday sales for Come and Go number 28. We're going to set a public hearing for March 3rd, 2022 to approve the fiscal year 23 budget. We're going to set a public hearing for March 3rd, 2022 to approve a pre-levy resolution to enter into a general obligation loan agreement allowing for debt service taxes to pay for fiscal year 23 capital improvement projects. We have a resolution setting a date of meeting at which it is proposed to approve a development agreement with Sportsplex USA LC and Heartland Sports Properties LLC, including annual appropriation tax increment payments. We have a resolution setting a date of meeting at which it is proposed to approve a development agreement with Diligent HCC LLC, including annual appropriation tax increment payments. We have a resolution setting March 3rd, 2022 for a public hearing regarding a zoning amendment to change 106.81 acres south of Beardsley Street and east of 50th Avenue from AR Agricultural Reserve to R160 Single Family Residential. A resolution approving pay estimate number 3 to SM Hintage and Sons Incorporated for Northwest Service Trunk Sewer Extension Project. Sorry for mangling the name. We have a resolution approving the renewal of preventative maintenance agreement with Life Med Safety. We have a resolution approving memorandum of understanding to fulfill the obligations of the potential FEMA assistance to firefighters prevention and safety grant award. We have a resolution authorizing the city of Norwalk, Iowa to apply for U-step funding for partial funding of the Iowa 28 and Beardsley Street intersection improvements project. We have a resolution approving an agreement with the shredder for participation in the 2022 residential paper shredding program. We have a resolution approving an agreement with Metro Waste Authority for participation in the 2022 residential scrap tire program. We have a resolution approving an agreement with ATech Recycling for the 2022 residential e-waste disposal program. We have a resolution approving an agreement with SPI Des Moines for participation in the 2022 residential white goods program. And we got monthly reports. I can get a motion. Second. Motion by Reva, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7 is old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item A is public hearing on proposed amendment to the Norwalk Urban Renewal Area. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing at 6:52 p.m. Holly, you want to present this to council?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was setting up a meeting for tomorrow. Can you reread that?
So it's the proposed amendment to the urban renewal area.
Oh, yes. Actually, I might have Jean do that one because she's our urban renewal area.
All right.
This basically, in a nutshell, allows us to borrow money. By setting up an urban renewal area, we're allowed to use TIF to pay for these projects. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Cool. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this item?
We have not.
Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:52 p.m. Item 7B is resolution to declare necessity and establish an urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.4 of the Code of Iowa and approve urban renewal plan amendment for the Norwalk urban renewal area. So we just heard about this from Jean. This step indicates that we have a need to have this urban renewal area and that we're going to establish that area. Anything else different?
Motion.
Second.
All right, any public comment? Good with that. All right, so motion by Baker, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston, yes, Lester.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Item 7C, it's first reading of an ordinance providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the 2022 addition to the Norwalk urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa. So this ordinance sets up the TIF district for Norwalk Central. Is that right?
Which one are we on?
C.
Yes, sorry, I was getting ready for D. Yes.
You guys are multitasking.
I got ahead of myself.
There's a
Yes,
lot of
this is where we can actually utilize the taxes for that area. Yes,
Awesome. Okay. Any
sorry.
discussion, questions, comments from council? Or public comment? Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Cool, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7D is public hearing regarding the proposed maximum property tax levy for the general fund, liability, property and self-insurance costs, and special revenue levies for employee benefits. So we'll open up the public hearing at 6:55 PM. Gene, I know you're ready.
I am ready for this one. Thank you. In 2019, the legislature changed how we can increase our tax amount. They added another public hearing, so we could ask for 100% of the previous year's taxes that were levied. But if we grow more than 2% from the previous year, we have to have another public hearing. We've grown about 7.6%. We're going to utilize almost all of it, about 7.4% of it. This is for any levies that are not related to debt service. So we have to have the second public hearing to utilize anything over 2%.
All right.
And it needs a 2/3 vote of the council.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:56 PM. Item 7E is a resolution to approve the proposed maximum property tax levy for fiscal year 23 for general fund liability, property and self-insurance costs, and special revenues levies for employee benefits. So we just had a public hearing on this item. Got anything to add, Gene?
I do not.
All right. Any discussion or questions from council?
Were there any written or oral?
Oh, you know what? I did not ask that, did I?
There were not.
Thank you. No, you're fine.
There you go.
Skipped right over that one, didn't you? Okay, any discussion from council? Or public comment? All right, motion by Livingston. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second, oh, sorry, Brian. David got it. Second by Lester. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. I'm going to use my checklist on this one. Item 7F is a public hearing regarding fiscal year 23 capital improvement plan or CIP budget. We'll open up the public hearing at 6:57 PM. Gene, what do you got?
Yes, thank you. As you know, we put together a 5-year capital improvement plan, and we really focus on that next year. So this will be approving the fiscal 23 CIP. It's about 24.5 million, and that's spread across all departments, including enterprise funds. The only changes that I have made to it, this was reviewed by the Finance Committee in December and Council in January. And since then, we've had a change to the Highway 28 in Beardsley. Project costs have gone up. You guys have already approved that. So I added 750,000 to that general obligation bond amount in that projects by funding source. And then I did add cobblestone, although we're meeting tomorrow and that number is subject to change. So that would be the only two changes in this document for your approval tonight.
All right. Lindsay, we received any oral or written comments on this?
We have not.
All right, any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:58 PM. Item 7G is resolution adopting the city of Norwalk capital improvement plan budget for fiscal year 2023. So we just had the public hearing on this item. Any discussion or questions from council? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Okay, motion by Cool, seconded by Reba. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston.
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
That motion carries. Item 7H. Public hearing regarding an amendment to chapter 175 zoning regulations regarding fireworks sales. So we'll go on ahead and open up the public hearing at 6:59 PM. Lieutenant Meese is here to answer questions, and I'll let Luke Paris present this to council.
Thank you. So this amendment is to address fireworks sales in town through the zoning ordinance. The specifics of the amendment that is before you today is to add a definition of consumer fireworks sales to the definition section of the zoning ordinance, and then to identify consumer fireworks sales as a principal permitted use allowed in the M1 district. We've also included a map of the M1 districts in town, so you can see where those would be located at. Just to get into kind of some of the history of how we ended up at the M1 district, after our summer 2021 sales period, we always do kind of a review, see what concerns there were, what things we might look at tweaking for codes, if anything. And one of the codes concerns that was brought up was proximity to some residences from some of the firework locations. So we worked with our fire chief to try and figure out, what would we propose if we were going to limit a location and say you can't be within so many feet. That led us to the fire code, which told us our fireworks stands are required to post notice that no discharge of fireworks are allowed within 300 feet of the sales locations. Though it's never really mentioned again in any of the codes. There's no penalty for doing that. It just seems to be a general safety guideline that says don't shoot fireworks off near other large amounts of fireworks. So we originally put together some ideas on where those the 4 locations could locate if we had that 300-foot boundary as a zoning requirement. Found that, well, all the sales locations wouldn't be allowed to exist if we went with that 300. So then we looked at some other options. Eventually ended up at the admin policy work group, talked with our city manager, city attorney, and really kind of came back around to discussing with the fire chief from a safety standpoint and what happens if there is a fire at one of these, which led her to review codes again to determine that we would have to evacuate within half mile of where that fire occurred. So when you look at that radius in the center of town, that's a sizable portion of the community. So then looking at, okay, if we're going to try and correct this from a safety standpoint, what's the appropriate way to look at fireworks sales? That led us to trying to find a location that was furthest from our residences as possible, which led us to the M1 district. We did talk about that idea at our admin policy group, and I think there was a lot of desire to try to make something work with our commercial districts, but coming back to that safety concern kind of kept bringing us to that idea that maybe that wasn't the best spot for them. So ultimately, we put together the ordinance before you today, took that to our Planning and Zoning Commission, who recommended approval, and it is before you today.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this?
I have not.
Okay, any other public comment on this? Yeah,
I'm back.
come on up. Please state your name and your address.
Oh, sure. I can. Thank you. My name is Jim Hetter, 1031 Bradford Place, West Des Moines, Iowa. I work with Leslie over here, and we manage some of the tents that Polino puts up throughout the state of Iowa. I want to thank you for the opportunity to respond. I also want to I appreciate staff reaching out to those folks that do fireworks in the city and giving us a heads up that we're looking at this change. Although I am as well disappointed. And the reason is I'd like to share with you some of the comments that you have now from the owner of the company. Sometimes I think people think we just throw a tent up, throw some tables, and see how many fireworks we can sell. There's a lot that goes into that. I think you can see some of the figures. I would like to point out, I think in the staff report, it indicated that all your fireworks generate about $600 worth of sales tax.
Our tent alone generated just under $1,800 worth of sales tax for the city. I do have our rock star operator here too, Heather. She has ran that tent since day one. She puts a lot of work into that tent. Facebook, she might make a few comments about that as well. You know, we work on safety. I'm familiar with what's called the FUSE program. It's the Fireworks Use Safety Education Program. State Fire Marshal's office does that. They piloted 4 spots in the state of Iowa this year. Norwalk was one of them. They had the fire truck there strictly to educate consumers on fireworks. Probably our biggest concern right now for this is we have a 3-year lease that was signed last year with the hardware store where we've been a tenant since day one. So we have signed, made an obligation here to Doug Capel for 2023 season. So for those reasons alone, some of our contractual obligations, we would like you to consider withdrawing this, postponing it, and maybe see if we can work through another solution. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I think Boom Daddy tried to unmute themselves. I don't know if they were going to talk or not.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll let somebody get, please.
Yep, we start out with our address, I understand, and then we can go ahead and speak with our names. Is that correct?
Name and address, please.
Yeah, Daniel and Aubrey Foy, 9124 West 127th Terrace, Overland Park, Kansas, 66213. Really appreciate you guys, as the other gentleman said, letting us know that this was something you were looking at. Definitely understand safety is a huge thing in fireworks, and you guys are definitely taking the right steps in looking at some of this. I would just agree with the other gentleman about cautioning, limiting this. In some research that we've done, the likelihood of a fireworks stand engulfing in flames is very limited. A home fire happens much more often, and those homes are kind of vacated around that. So we do have very strict requirements for the state fire marshal, as well as the city fire chief, I believe, that came through this year, to make sure we are safe. And we do practice and teach safe practices to the people that come in our stints. But limiting this to the M1 district, from the research we've done, would not eliminate us from being 300 feet from a residence. It would also probably make less stands in the city of Norwalk, if any, which would eliminate some competition and could drive up prices. So just feel like this is, like I told Luke, a little bit of a game changer, and I would second the other gentleman to kind of put a pause on this and see if there's a more workable solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Doug Capel. I live in Waukee, but I do own the hardware store here in town. I guess I'd just like to say, on behalf of somebody who does rent to Polino and these folks, we think they run a really great operation, quite frankly. And I get it. I'm not stupid. People don't like fireworks. Okay. And you can say what you want, but this is kind of an intent. I think some people probably look at this as, well, this is a way to get fireworks out of town. This isn't going to change a thing. Fireworks are still going to be shot off. They're still going to be shot off at night and July 3rd and all that. None of this is going to change. All this is really going to do is hurt some really nice people who run legitimate small businesses in your town. And I think it's extremely short-sighted. You talk about the 300 feet. If you want the tent in my parking lot to be 300 feet, well, we just have to, all we really basically have to do is move it to the center of the parking lot. And I'm pretty sure we would be 300 feet from, any residential. Lastly, I don't know. I get the argument of needing to evacuate, if that's what the International Fire Code says, but I would have to ask the fire department. I'm sure there's other types of fires that would happen in the city. I'm sure if Come and Go went up in flames, I would imagine the evacuation route of Come and Go would be great too. I mean, I'm sure there's other fires in the city that would require evacuations just like a fireworks stand.
So Come and Go, we're gonna treat like a structure. We don't look at the emergency response guidebook.
Well, at this point in time, let's
Fair
just
enough,
direct.
fair enough.
just
No, that's
to
fine.
council.
It's not my place to ask him a question. I like I say, I think it's, in conclusion, I guess, you know what? Do I collect rent from these folks? I do. Is it nice rent? It is. Is it gonna change my life if I don't get it? No, but I do have a binding agreement with Polino and these folks for another 2 years. Again, I think at the end of the day, all this is really gonna do is hurt some small business people. It's not gonna change whether fireworks get shot off in the city of Norwalk or anything like that. And that's really about all there is to it.
Thank you.
I'm that rock star he was talking about. I'm Heather Swanson. I live in Waukee, and I've ran the fireworks stand since fireworks have been legal since 2017. I can tell you that fire chief, police chief, they've all been wonderful to us. We pride ourselves on safety at the Capella Hardware, lot, and it's something that, it's not only a family business for me. It's our livelihood for a year. And with that, we hire a lot of Norwalk kids. We hire a lot of Norwalk residents with that. And I have fears of safety as well. We pride ourselves on handing out safety sheets. We do a lot of things on Facebook. We get a lot of people involved just to bring to Norwalk and to bring to the community. I know that it's really helped, Capel's Hardware Store, that we have that advertising for that month. One of my biggest fears about moving it to the zone that we were looking at is that those kids, my nighttime person, because it is a tent, right? It's very different than a structure. With a tent, you have one person there at night, and that person is staying there all night long. At Capel's, you have lights everywhere. You have the cops driving by, periodically. How often is that going to happen? What's the safety for those employees? What's the safety for, in those protocols? Where do they go if there's a tornado in the middle of the night? Where do they go if there's a tornado in the middle of the day? So I'm thinking for not only for residents of Norwalk, I'm thinking for our staff as well, and for that. So I would ask too that you just reconsider and consider all of those points and give us an opportunity to reevaluate that. We walked it. We personally walked it 300 feet from where it was. I thought it was correct. So if it wasn't, that's on us, but we've tried to do our best with that. At least I can't speak for the other fireworks stands. We're so close to other places. That kind of blew my mind. But with us, I think we've been more than compliant with all of that and tried to be. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Online? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:13 PM. All right, so 7I is the first reading of an ordinance. First reading of an ordinance amending chapter 175 zoning regulations regarding fireworks sales. So we just had the public hearing on the zoning change to limit fireworks sales to M1 zoning districts. I know we continue to evolve our fireworks ordinances since its inception. We've changed it we've changed it every year. And not only have we changed times to detonate, but also zoning regulations as to where fireworks can be sold. Like last year, we changed temporary sales regulations based on tents and
Yeah,
locations
it
of
was
tents and that kind of stuff.
more aesthetic last year.
Yeah. As we learn more, we'll continue to bring this to council and make sure we're properly balancing, ensuring public safety and ensuring opportunities for local businesses, because we're trying to make that balance. With that said, go ahead and open it up for discussion, council.
Your mouth was open first.
So I struggled with this one because I felt like our M1 district, we don't have enough of it to take it down just to M1. I think I said that the last time we talked about taking it down to M1. I mean, we've talked about this a lot of times. And Chief, I know we've talked about it too. That taking it to M1, it really limits and restricts where stuff can be sold. And I just don't feel like that's where I want to go. I'd rather see us figure, I was hoping we could figure out something with the feet. I know Chief and I talked quite a bit about that like, over the summer. So
Figure something out with what?
about the number of feet from a residence and whether, you know, and how do we measure that? Because I think that was going to have to be defined as far as how to measure that, because I think currently if you said it's 300 feet from the property, then we go to the edge of your property and then we go 300 feet and it takes out all of those houses that shouldn't be shooting fireworks within. But again, if you go from the 10 and 300 feet, they was still catching some of the properties, but not necessarily the houses. So this was me. I don't like it. I don't like M1. I don't like, I'd rather find a better solution for it.
If I may, kind of give a little bit of a history on how we got here legally, is if you remember, the state code gave cities the authority to decide how and when fireworks could be lit. And that's why you see a lot of the jurisdictions around here saying, okay, you can't ignite any fireworks. And we've discussed the dates pretty freely and trying to figure out what's best for our citizens. The other half of that is sales. If you remember, the Iowa Code addressed fireworks sales. And when that first came out, everybody, cities and everybody, it was very questionable in the history saying, can a city regulate sales? Because the code says you can. Some people said, oh my goodness, we can't regulate it at all. And then there were some cities that said, well, wait a second. Yeah, we can't regulate fireworks discharge specifically. But this law doesn't preempt the city's right to exercise its zoning authority. Okay. And in a case right at the beginning, from where there was a legal case, Bellino Fireworks versus some cities, Johnston, Boone, I can't remember what other ones. And in that case, they challenged those cities' ability to rezone and to change zoning, say, okay, you can go here in zoning. And, you know, it was a pretty big litigation went in the federal court, and federal court said, well, wait a second. They agreed with the cities saying you can, through your zoning powers, say where these sales can occur, but you can't have specific laws regulating fireworks sales such as 300 feet from here, or you know, specific containers regarding fireworks sales, because our state law already said that. And they said that, well, that, you know, through preemption state law, you can't do something that is contrary to state law. So, you know, things like saying, okay, fireworks can't be closer than fireworks sales can't be closer than 300 feet to a residence. We can't do that. And that's why, in the past legislations that we've done, we can tweak our temporary sales, because we applied that to all of our temporary sales in town, whether it was temporary greenhouses, whether it was fireworks, whether it was food trucks, all these temporary sales. And we made it equal to all the temporary sales, because we can't specifically regulate against fireworks on other sales other than through our zoning power. So if the council said, okay, Jim, what we want to do is write the ordinance so that we're still going to allow it in all these different zoning areas, but we want to make sure we have a 300-foot setback. I mean, we want to make sure that there's these other precautions regarding fires, and, you know, maybe we can put in some sort of suppression systems and blah, blah, blah. You know, we can't do that. Legally, we can't. Bellino would take us to court, just like they took those other people to court.
Unless we require it on all temporary structures, correct?
Yes, but I mean,
temporary structure has to be.
Yeah,
300
but
feet.
it's hard to say. 300 feet is the reasoning behind our 300 feet is because it's a fire danger. It's pretty hard. We'd be pushing the limit, and we are dealing with, there's a history of litigation over these ordinances. And I certainly wouldn't want to put the city of Norwalk out on the bleeding edge of that.
So basically, so I'm understanding it correctly, the state has defined the rules and the standards where these things can be located by the way they have set the rules.
As far as sales.
Okay, so now we look at our zoning and we say, okay, where does it fit what the state requirements are?
Well, basically, we can do zoning as that's the courts found that that was not a contradiction.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand that that's legal for us to do. But what we're doing this evening, right, is we're applying the standards the state has set, right? And trying to determine a rational location that would qualify or meet those standards.
And
Right?
it's not really meeting those standards. It's those standards. If we said it's okay, it can go to residential area, the state would set the standards on the sales in the residential area. We said it's in the commercial area, the state would set the standards in the commercial area. And but the city council, P and Z, I mean, their job is to figure out proper uses within proper zoning areas. And so it's within your authority and not contradictory to the state law to say, we're going to allow it in this commercial area, or we're going to allow it in M1, or we're going to allow it, in CM, or whatever zoning classification you have. But that's the extent of our regulation. We can't say, okay, all fireworks, putting hours on operation and, additional restrictions on fireworks, but you just can't.
I guess my question is, okay, the distance limitation, the state has put that down, right? As part of what the state has, or that's our city ordinance? Or?
The state, there's no distance limitation right now. Okay. There is a requirement by the state that they have to post on their temporary sales tents not to light off fireworks within 300 feet. It doesn't mean that it's illegal to go 10 feet away and light off a firework. It's just more of a safety thing saying don't light it off within 300 feet.
All right. So in other words, we're counting on the fact that people would possibly discharge fireworks within 300 feet of the structure.
Yeah, if we think, boy, it just can't happen within 300 feet.
I look back at some of the occurrences we've had over the last couple of years. Thinking about that one in particular where they piled everything in the driveway and lit it off by accident. And I'm thinking to myself, that makes me nervous. Assuming that no one would ever set off fireworks near one of those. I mean, there's not always that much common sense running around out here. I'm sorry, just to be real blunt about it.
I agree with you on that.
And I've got nothing against any of the vendors. I haven't had a problem with any of them. Or the property owners that have been, renting space or rent. I got no problem. Okay. But I genuinely would have a concern because I think that whatever we set up, we should try to be prudent about it and try to do it in a safe way, for sales. I mean, like the mayor said, we kind of finesse this every year and hopefully we're getting it to something that's better, as we go. But I can understand the concern there that the fire chief had. I fully do. And it's nothing against any of the vendors or nothing against the property owners at all. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
My motivation on my input on this has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not fireworks are going to be lit off in the city. My motivation is what is best use of our space in the city, the best use of our the commerce in our city, the safest way to manage this. I do believe that we should allow our citizens to purchase fireworks in our town. It's clear to me they want to do that. And that others want to come into our town to do that. I want it to be the safest way it can be. And I don't have any good answer for what that is. We have not had any real issues, knock on wood, with the sales that we have had thus far. As far as I know, there's not been any safety issues. Other towns close to us have, and it's foolish for us to think we're not gonna. But by the same token, in spite of the ordinances we have for the lighting off of fireworks, people do it wrong and at the wrong time and in the wrong place all over the place in our city. And those are personal choices that they make every day. And so then we say, well, this business can't be here because it's dangerous when they're doing all the right safety practices and our residents are doing none. Not all of them, but many of them. So this has been a very difficult issue for me. There are some locations in the last year where there have been sales that trouble me a great deal. I don't believe that there's sufficient space for the sales and the rest of the business that needs to go on where the sales tents are placed. I don't, but there's not a way for us to regulate that. So I don't know what the right solution is, but so it's clear. It's not about eliminating fireworks sales from the city. It's not about moving them out. It's not about eliminating the use of fireworks in our city. It's about trying to figure out the best way with what we're allowed to do under the law to manage the location of the sales for me.
And for full disclosure, I probably went to each one of the tents that was in town and purchased fireworks within the last couple of years.
And I went to zero. Yes, and I purchased none.
But
I,
go ahead, Brian.
I would like to say, I didn't even realize that there was a fireworks stand behind the apartment building where the old Subway was. Until it came up on Facebook, and it's like it's 20 some feet from a house or something like that. And I was embarrassed at that. I thought, who in the heck allowed that placement? And then also, and I started thinking about it just as much, the large stand in the Fairway parking lot. If some crazy person would light one or something with the amount of congestion and cars and people in Fairway, that parking lot is congested without a fireworks stand. I can't imagine the mayhem and the people that would die there. I think we need to take a more proactive, and I think Jim described it well. The state has tied your hands. You have one tool to use, and it is C1 or M1 or whatever else you choose. But for us, we don't have enough C1 to go around. I just don't think that C1 works out for us in Norwalk. So I think M1 appears to be about the only option.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of a shame that we're putting this spot away. Yep. Because we can't really mediate out justice. I mean, you really can't because your hands are tied. So you got to think about the situations Brian's talking about, which are very obvious. And the only way we can adjust that is to say that classification of property, they can't use it, right? Move it to another classification. And that's a bad deal because it treats all locations basically the same that are designated that way. Correct? I mean, that's where we find ourselves. But the state doesn't allow us the leeway to be able to do that. And it's frustrating. It really is.
Yeah.
But I agree with Brian. Who allowed that to happen? We did. We did. Because we said, go ahead and use a commercial area. Okay? Once we say that, guess what? They can use all the commercial areas, right? Because that's what we said. And the state won't let us say, you can use that commercial area, but you can't use that one. I think it's utterly stupid. And I agree with the frustration these people have voiced here. But what can we do? Somebody's gonna come in, like that vendor, whoever it was, and I'm not casting any aspersions, but they probably ruined it for everybody else. To be honest about it, setting up that close to a residence.
Yeah, it kind of brought everything to light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna approve that again.
Yeah.
I might have been stupid once, but I'm not gonna do it again. My daddy didn't raise me that way.
Mr. Capel asked a question earlier. Lieutenant Meese, I think I'll let you go ahead and answer that one as far as what happens to if you have a fire at come and go or.
Yeah, so we'll classify that as a structure. We'll treat it like a house, essentially. Collapse zones might be a little bit bigger. When it comes to fireworks, we have to reference the emergency response guidebook. That's what we go to for any explosives, chemicals, anything of that nature. And so we're looking at it from a response standpoint if the tent catches on fire. I can tell you right now, I've inspected most of the facilities for fireworks. They're very professional. If we ever have issues, they always make sure they take care of them. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the position of the fire chief is looking at a response if a fire does happen at the tent. So it does present us with some logistical headaches. I do believe, and Chief Porter also believes, it's a small percentage of a chance that it could happen, but we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't present to the elected officials potentials. That's the whole key to fire prevention, is what could potentially happen. We don't have a position either way. I understand that the fireworks stands are valuable in the community. They present foot traffic, they present spending, but we still have to let you guys know what we're looking at. So
yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
sure.
when I mentioned come and go, I was more specifically speaking about like. gas,
Fuel,
like
yes,
fuel.
yes.
I'm talking about places that have.
Absolutely. If we were talking a hazardous material, I would again have to reference a emergency response guidebook.
That's what I didn't speak about building. I meant where they sell fuel or where they sell propane or whatever.
Yeah, so I couldn't tell you, but off the top of my head, I'm betting it's probably half a mile.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. In your opinion, I don't know, it's probably not fair to ask you this question, but in your opinion, if fire happened at a tent, and let's say the size of Molino's tent, because it's pretty large. How fast would all those go up?
I mean, that's pretty subjective on the size of the ordinance. So, if somebody was there, they are required to have fire extinguishers. They're trained how to use them. So if somebody was there, it could be mitigated before we even get there.
Okay.
If it were happening in the middle of the night and we had to do a response, I mean, in my opinion, I think that we could effectively mitigate the situation in a safe manner quickly. I hate to toot our own horns too much, but we're pretty good at what we do. So I think it would be an unlikely situation that a major incident happened, but there's still a potential, which we have to advise you of. So
I'm just thinking that it could go up. It could go up and be hazardous before you even get a chance to start evacuating the area.
And it could.
Yeah.
I can't say that it wouldn't.
Mayor, remember that driveway video?
That was a
Remember how
scary
fast that
video.
happened? And remember how fast that happened?
It did happen fast.
And that was just a pile of them in the driveway. You know, and nothing against these folks. I'm not complaining about them. I'm sure they trained their people and they got fire extinguishers.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I keep coming back to the fact that if we can only, well, a certain classification of property, right? So if we open up that classification, it means that classification wherever it's located. We can't control it. And, you know, it's stupid, but that's the position they put us in.
Any other discussion or comments from council? Have any more public comment from anybody that want to add anything?
Yeah, if I could, I understand.
Can you come on up? Sorry.
The fire safety, you know, we do have fire extinguishers throughout the tent. We do have in our tents, wire mesh around, so keep things from blowing. We have fire breaks, which are fairly recently new, couple years. But the state fire marshal does look at all these. They do look at distances and they do approve site plans. And we have not had issues with getting that done, and certainly here in Norwalk, obviously, because we've been here a number of years. We obviously like to stay here. I don't know if there's another solution we can work on. We're concerned that we're, tied up for 2 more years, as I mentioned in an agreement. So we'd love an opportunity to try to work through it, see if we can get another season in and figure something out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Questions, public comment? So hearing none, anybody want to make a motion to approve first reading of the ordinance as presented? Say again?
We already did that.
What?
I'll second the motion.
All right, so I got seconded, first by Reva, motion by Reva, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Lester,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba, yes. Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Okay, that motion carries. And we'll do second reading at the next meeting. All right. Item 7J is resolution authorizing grant application for Warren County ARPA funds for certified site 2.0. So the city would like to take advantage of Warren County's ARPA funds, and we believe that the new certified site project would be a great place to utilize some of the funding. This resolution is going to authorize Luke to submit the grant application to the county. Luke, you got anything to add?
Nope, I think you summarized it nicely. Thank you.
Yeah. Any discussion or questions, comments from council?
So if for some reason we don't end up going to an actual certified site, what would happen with the money, with the grant money?
The county, I also anticipate that they are going to ask that question as we go through this process. The main thing that we are going to be, that I would be explaining to them is that the purpose of this is to help us with infrastructure to make economic development happen within that area. If it's not through an official certified site process, which I believe we will get there after some recent meetings that Holly's had. But if we don't, I do believe the end goal is still the same. So if you'd like us to change something in that grant application, we could do that. Like I said, I would anticipate the county's going to have some similar questions.
Yeah, I thought what I understood was after some meetings, we may not end up going to a certified site. So I just was questioning, I guess, that term. But if the ultimate goal is to provide infrastructure to a certain area to help with industrial economic growth, and whether or not we call it a certified site doesn't affect the ability to receive the grant, I'm fine with that.
It might just need to be called shovel ready sites instead.
Yeah, we could, it would be easy. It's a one-page application. We could easily change some of that language.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably just what's highlighted in yellow there.
Right, yeah, just exactly.
And you could say infrastructure improvements on the site described above, and you're good to go.
I think we can make that change.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion or comments from council?
Motion
Thank you. As amended.
As amended.
as amended. Thank you.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7K is resolution approving supplemental agreement number 2 for additional engineering services for Iowa 28 Sunset Drive and North Avenue intersection improvements project. Wayne, would you go over this?
You got the original contract we have with Snyder and Associates was for design engineering only. And then instead of doing a whole new contract, what we do is just issue a supplemental agreement to amend the first contract we had with them. We did one supplemental previously that was to add in the fiber optic relocation, and this one adds in some construction services and also covers some work they did outside of the original scope. I probably don't recall, but last March I did bring up to council that they're doing much of work outside of scope related to the land acquisitions and utility relocations. So we have a contract here for them to do the inspection. We have pre-con meetings set up, one tomorrow for the fiber optic relocation, one next week. So work is beginning. It's very exciting. We're here. So, and Andy Burke with Snyder and Associates is on the call too to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Any questions or comments by council? Any public comment? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Motion. Second.
Motion by Lester, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7L, resolution releasing real estate mortgage to Comito Real Estate LLC. So the agreement for Capital City Fruit and Comito Real Estate has ended. And Comito Real Estate is asking for the city to release the mortgage as agreed to in the development agreement. You got anything to add, Jim?
Nope, you said pretty good.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions, council?
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7M is resolution approving Iowa Department of Transportation's offer to buy 0.83 acre tract of vacant land located along Highway 28. So there's a small tract of land along Highway 28. The DOT is vacating. We're able to purchase this right away for $127,000. And this vacated right away is vital to the hotel project. Luke, you got anything to add?
No, those are the basics.
All right, any questions or discussion from council?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Cool, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion or public comment? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7N is resolution approving first payment to Signature Companies and Luana Bank for the Beardsley Sewer Project. So the city agreed to pay Signature Companies $260,000 after we accepted the first phase of the sewer project. Developers contractor did not hit the correct depth of the sewer, which resulted in the city incurring some engineering costs to verify that the sewer would function correctly for our future needs. So V&K was able to confirm the sewer would function correctly, which is good news. However, we were subtracting those engineering fees from the first payment, so we'll be paying approximately $250,000 to fulfill our end of the agreement. Gene, you got anything to add?
Just that V&K did review the invoices as well as myself and feel comfortable with this payment.
Great, thank you. Discussion or question, council?
Did everything end up copacetic out there as far as the residences out there? You know, where that went in along the.
Luke, you want to address that as far as the easement agreements with the residents on the north side of Beardsley?
A lot of it was final restoration, which I think we're waiting for this spring. That was part of it, as we told the folks out there, let's get through this spring to see how if we get a little bit more rain. As you know, we went through a drought and that was a little bit of an issue. So I don't think it's completely resolved yet as far as final restoration.
All right, well, as long as we keep that in our sights, I guess.
Yes.
Good question. Anything else? Any public comment?
Sorry, Mayor, one last thing to respond to Ed. To keep in mind, there will be future payments as well. So if we bump up against some other issues out there, we'll have future payments that we could also draw upon to make things right.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Cool, seconded by Riva. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Riva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7O. It's the third reading of an ordinance amending the Hughes Century Crossing Plan Unit Development. So final reading to approve the Hughes PUD. Luke or Holly, anything you'd like to add?
Please approve it.
She's almost giddy over there.
I know.
Yeah. Any discussion or questions for council? Comment? Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion. Second.
All right, motion by Livingston, second by Cool. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Riva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7P. Sorry for making you sit here all night long.
We appreciate it though. It's nice to have an audience.
I saw Boom Daddy and Freedom on the screen. Appreciate it.
All right, 7P, it's the third reading of an ordinance amending fireworks usage dates by amending chapter 41 of the Norwalk Municipal Code. So this is the final reading of an ordinance that will set when legal fireworks detonation can occur. Luke or Chief, anything to add?
No, sir.
All right. Any discussion or comments from council?
Motion.
By Livingston, seconded by Cool. Lindsay would call.
Councilmember Riva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 7Q, the second and possibly final reading of an ordinance amending chapter 164, community development application fees and chapter 177 rates and fees of the Norwalk Municipal Code. So ordinance is going to change fees for several departments. Lindsay, anything to add?
The changes that were talked about last time have been made. I think all of them, sure hope so. Luke and I got together, Robin and I got together. We removed the definitions. We're gonna address that in a later ordinance because they are not in chapter 35, I think it is.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing.
All right. Any questions or? Council? I get a motion to approve second reading?
Second.
Okay, motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Riva.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Given the timing of these rate changes, staff is requesting the waiving of the third reading. Can I get a motion to waive the third reading?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Reva,
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, motion carries. Item 8, council inquiries and staff updates. Luke Nelson, we'll start with you.
I'm too clogged up to talk, so I'm gonna pass.
All right, thank you. Jack.
Nothing.
Brian?
Nothing?
Lindsay?
Nothing.
Robin?
Nothing.
All right, Jean?
The library has a trustee position open, so if you know of any citizen who would be interested in that, they can contact me and I'll answer any questions that they have. And I did just pass out the March flyer with all of the library activities. And I did want to point out one specific activity that's happening on Saturday, March 26th. They're starting to offer a sensory access hour, and that is going to be a special time 1 hour before the library opens, where families and children with special needs who don't do well with a lot of lighting or sounds can come in and have a quieter visit at the library. So it's just for them to help meet their needs. Yeah.
Good, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. This coming Tuesday, the 22nd, there's a ribbon cutting grand opening at Alice Place Senior Living. And then on the 28th at noon is Northern Lights grand opening and ribbon cutting. So we were pretty involved in both of those projects. So it would be good if you guys can make it to show up for those. And then Deanna wanted me to remind everybody that HERDA starts their transportation services on March 1st. So good for our people.
That's a message for those ribbon cutting.
Thank you. Jean?
Budgets, development agreements. That's about it.
All right, good, thanks. Chief?
Yeah, 6 weeks or so ago, I think it was, we had representatives from Catch Des Moines and the Ironman competition come and present what they wanted to do with the course. The DOT recommended that well, let me rephrase that. The DOT wanted to close Highway 28 completely in both directions for the entire day from Railroad Avenue to Colonial Parkway. And that was a result of them doing the work on the Roanoke River Bridge and having to direct traffic there. And then they thought it would be easier for them to just close the road. So instead, they changed the route, and the route will no longer go up Highway 28 at all. It will come in from coming on G14, turn north on 50th, and go straight out of town on 50th. Then it will turn right on Southwest 72nd and go out to Highway 28 from there. Highway 28 will be closed that entire day north of Army Post Road. But Norwalk residents will be able to get out of town in every direction except on 50th Street. And they'll be able to get in town from every direction except on G14. So it's not a huge issue for us that way. It does potentially take away a advertised viewing spot in town. But if the alternative is to say we're going to just miss it. So that's the report on that, and I don't have anything else.
All right, thanks. Lieutenant Meeks?
We covered everything Chief wanted to cover. She is in Mexico still, so I encourage everybody to bombard her with emails. So, that's pretty much all I have.
All right. You do understand this is on tape. She could hear it.
Yeah.
All right.
This is the first time in like 12 years she's been able to, or 15 years she's been able to go out of town this time of year because her kids are not wrestling.
Wayne.
We're gonna have our Beardsley Street and Highway 28 project public meeting on March 8th. So I'll probably mention it again next council meeting, but we're already planning ahead for next year's project. We didn't have one on North Avenue because everybody adjoining that property we've had discussions with on right of way. This one's a little different, so we will have a public meeting on it. That's it.
All right, thank you. Luke.
Yeah, so we've got a couple rezonings coming up. We did set a public hearing for our next council meeting for one, which is just a single family rezoning, and then we've got another PUD proposal in the same area, which are both south of Beardsley Street, west of the Shadow Creek development. So those two projects would develop the next kind of 240 acres of the old Ron property. So those are some pretty sizable projects coming forward. On the nuisance side of things, we've been working, and Lindsay and Greg have been helping us get a book put together of citations that we can use for nuisance stuff. So that's kind of exciting. We'll probably see an ordinance coming back forward soon to establish some violation fees for that stuff. So, yeah.
One thing, I don't know how receptive they will be, but for the fireworks vendors that were here, would you ask them or tell them that they need to lobby their legislators? Make it more flexible for cities to allow them in town. Sure. Or where they can.
Yep. It'd be nice if they could do that.
Because they're the ones who are gonna need the lobby.
Yep. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Hey, nothing like the excitement of being able to issue a citation. Anyway, WRA meeting we had, and we set our budget for next year, $220,000 below this year. So that was good. The other thing is that they'll be bringing before us at some point rate for their large users, like industrial users, commercial users, depending upon the amount of contaminant that they need to separate out of the water. So in the future, we'll probably see such an animal come before us for our approval. That's all.
Thank you. David?
I just am getting a little more concerned about County Line Road out there off 50th. And what's going to happen when West Des Moines just shuts it down and they don't have a 2080 yet with us to finish that. And I'm getting concerned as we get closer to construction season. So I just want to make sure staff knows if they shut it down, I want you to go take the barricades down on our half the road because they don't have a right to at this
I
point.
sent them another email today reminding them that we don't have a 2080 yet, and I said that we need to have one before construction, so it's probably second or third one I've sent here this week.
Yeah, no, you guys are communicating with them. They're just the ones not communicating. So I think staff, you go take the barricades down and open up our half the road if we have to, so.
And speaking of that, the Ironman race course might change because they're gonna have to go through that intersection and it might be under construction. 50th and counting, which I don't think they realize that yet. Which I probably
make that part of the 2080 as well.
I'll probably tell them that. Remember to tell them that tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Stephanie.
MPO meeting today, the MPO going forward will be getting another $215,000 a year from the federal government. So
all right,
money to spend locally. And for the new economic development district, currently we're in the Denver region. But the Denver region has a lot of money that they can distribute. And because Iowa is part of that now for the tourism part of it, it's expected that because we're new members that we'll get some allocation this year. Iowa submitted 4 projects, other areas too. So hope is that Iowa gets some money. So yeah, first year. And there were election of officers today for the executive committee. Bob Adderleg is chair and I will be vice chair.
hey,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Little something to do.
Oh, don't have anything. All right, just to let you know, so we have some economic development stuff that's going on. I know we don't have a meeting scheduled on March 17th. We are going to have a meeting scheduled for March 24th to do some economic development stuff. And just to let you know, we had a meeting with name just left me, Des Moines Waterworks Director. Ed Corrigan. About Central Iowa, or yeah, the Central Iowa Water Works, and that's the regional, gonna be the Regional Waterworks Authority. We should probably have some sort of a 2080 or some sort of agreement with them coming on March the 24th as well. It's just an agreement that says we want to participate. There is no details behind that participation, that they just want to know that we want to be involved.
Mayor, it's gonna be a resolution of support right now,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
it'll come
Super, thank you.
back as at like a 2080.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's all I got. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Cool, seconded by Reva. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. 7:59. Should I wait till 8 o'clock to gavel it out? We're adjourned, 7:59. Thank you.